German Jewish immigrants built Temple Beth Israel in 1895, originally located in Boise's downtown North End. The nation's first practicing Jewish governor, Moses Alexander, was a founder of Temple Beth Israel. After World War II, Eastern European immigrants built a second Boise synagogue. Ahavith Israel identified as a conservative synagogue, while Beth Israel followed the Reform movement. The two groups merged in 1986, creating the current congregation, Congregation Ahavith Beth Israel, or CABI, as congregants call it. In 2003, the original temple was moved to the campus on Latah Street, where it stands today to serve the local Jewish community. CABI is the country's oldest synagogue in continuous use, west of the Mississippi River.
I have always felt my Judaism was part of my identity, and I grew up in an area where there weren't very many Jewish people.
I grew up in a very Reformed congregation in the Washington, D.C. area, and frankly, at that time in my life, Judaism was important to me, but I didn't have a family, and my husband's not Jewish.
I've never felt anything but total acceptance from the people here. Everybody's been great.
We realized we wanted to start going to synagogue. And the only synagogue we knew about was the historical synagogue on State Street next to the Y.
At one time, my personal phone number, to the chagrin of my children, was, hello, you have reached the Ada County Human Rights Task Force. You have reached, Voices of Faith for Human Rights.
But as the community grew, we were kind of outgrowing the two different places, and we weren't very connected.
Even if there's only one Jew in town, there has to be two synagogues.
I told you that.
Yeah, no,
then
really.
There was this whole concept of how do we merge a conservative and a reform congregation, and there were some challenges. All of these things brought challenges, but we kind of worked through it because the community was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be really hard. I'm not sure we can do it. Yes, we can. And then we did it.
There was a groundswell of support, but mostly at Beth Israel, to merge the two congregations. People thought, this is crazy. We should just join the two congregations, have two buildings. The more people we have, the stronger the congregation will be, the more resources we'll have. You start thinking of all the rationalizations. That's what people were thinking.
So somebody just, I think, said as a joke, why don't we just move the building? And then we started thinking, can you move the building? It was like a crazy idea, but could it be done?
The service is dictated by the prayer book. And how you would say the prayers, how much English would be in the service, how much Hebrew would we say. It was, and it's funny though, because Havith came in, we just naturally moved to a more conservative service. And there was so much more Hebrew in the service than we ever had before. And people just naturally moved that way.
It was really moving to see the building come and then to watch it on this site. We walked, behind the building, middle of the night. It was freezing cold.
Definitely belonging, connecting, having a purpose, being highly motivated to make sure that the Jewish community has a very vivid presence in the Boise community.
It's a family away from family.
I've been part of the community, and although I don't consider myself religious at all, but belonging to the community, making sure that the community thrives, making sure that for those that want this Jewish community, that it exists. I'm very highly motivated in that way.
A lot of the things I love about CABI's education process is thinking out of the box, and it's very experiential. You get the academic, but it's more about how do you feel about being Jewish? How do you want to continue doing things and know more? Is this enjoyable for you? What's your connection to being Jewish? But I think the merger brought together the very best of both congregations.
We have a thriving Jewish community, a full staff. My God, we have Goldsteins. We have bagels and bialys now in town, which we certainly did not have 30 years ago. Moving to Boise now, The Anne Frank Human Rights Memorial is one of the first things that our community shows off. So that gives, I think, a very strong message that there is a Jewish presence, that it is very inclusive. This community cared enough to invest and build a statement like the Anne Frank Human Rights Memorial.
So I've been a docent at the Anne Frank Memorial probably since the memorial opened. I've been involved. It opened in 2002. I also would emphasize it's a human rights memorial. It's not a Holocaust memorial. So if you get tours of the Anne Frank Memorial, there are lots of different stations with human rights quotes from biblical times to present day, and the whole spectrum of human rights, social justice, victims, upstanders who stood up against the abuses that were going on, survivors.
And so I kind of look at the milestones of CABI and milestones of my family, kind of they're connected in certain ways. I can picture what we're doing in both places.
Especially after having my first child, I always knew my kids were going to be Jewish. And so it was whether or not, they were going to understand what that meant and have a community that they were a part of. And so that became very important to me.
I would say we are closer today than we ever have been before.
Obviously, CABI over other options was the right one for us because we're particularly religious. And I just am comfortable in the Reform movement with the Reform congregations. My husband's not Jewish, not particularly religious.
It's a community effort that, oh my gosh, like I explained before, I actually love to be behind the scenes and connect people to move forward. So it's a huge community effort. None of us could have done this without those that preceded us and those that are currently doing it. From an old human rights activist, the greatest feeling in the whole world was when there were lots of people showing up at events and lots of people showing up at parades that I didn't even know their faces. That was the greatest gift.
A lot of times people, especially if they're moving from a larger Jewish community to Boise, there's some concerns about it, right? First of all, I would just say, and this came out with CABI Reimagined,
I feel like I'm not asked to believe anything that I have a difficult time believing. And I think the things that the boys learn here are good things. That they don't learn about the shortcomings or the evils of others. They learn about, themselves and positive things.
Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael.